We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Tuesday. I did a TikTok live yesterday. That was fun. It's always interesting to get the input and such. Today, we've got a guest that you know very well. His name is Eric. He's from Iowa. On TikTok and in YouTube, he's goes under the handle of Analytical Iowan. It's always a great pleasure to have because we're two guys of a like mind. He's younger than I am, but we're two big dumb white guys sitting in our houses. So we got that going for us. So how you doing, Eric? Are you holding everything together with all the crazy shit going on?
Oh yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's been kind of normal around here. I did get a chance just on an offhand. I went deeper into town than I normally go. I live kind of toward one of the edges, and I don't need to go downtown very often. My town's not very big, but still. And I
Yeah,
just happened to go in an area I don't normally go, and I saw nothing but Harris and Wall signs. I don't think I saw a single Trump sign anywhere I went.
really.
Yeah,
That's
that was
Iowa.
yesterday. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. Do you feel a shift going on in the state? I know it's up for debate whether it'll go blue or not. That'd be a pretty big stretch for it to go blue, but you're obviously seeing some things that tell you there's some changes going on in that state.
From the little bit of where I've been around in the state, I'm noticing a lot more Harris Walls signs, and not just Harris Walls. I'm seeing a lot of signs up and down the ticket for candidates that are all Democrat. And I'm not seeing really any split yards where they have like a Harris Walls sign, but they still got the Republican representative or something like that, or Republican state representatives in their yard. I'm seeing a lot of blue from what I'm seeing. And just from knowing the state and knowing we've got the abortion ban in effect, we got the transgender ban where they can't talk about it in schools that just took effect, all of that happening within a couple months of the election. I think Iowa has got a good chance of flipping blue.
Did you hear about the situation down in Georgia? They had the abortion ban down there 6 weeks, and then uh, a state judge overturned that and returns it back to 22 weeks. That's an interesting event in Georgia. Some would say
Yeah.
a red state. I think this is the trend of what's going to happen in some states. The Republicans are going to continue to try to shove this stuff down our throats. But when things settle down after the election and it goes back to the courts, they're going to be overturned, a lot of them, because what they're doing is essentially unconstitutional.
Well, a couple takeaways I had from what I read on that Georgia abortion ban getting overturned. The judge said liberty in Georgia includes the right of a mother to make decisions about her own body or a woman to make decisions about her own body and basically to protect her from the state making those choices or something to that effect. And then Brian Kemp came out and said, well, one judge just put his beliefs ahead of everybody else. So we're going to continue to fight for the right to life in this state, and we're going to keep going after it. We're going to appeal this decision.
Well, of course they're going to appeal it, but we're coming up on the election and things are going to change. Um, you've got two blue senators in that state. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the legislature in Georgia. I mean, I've said before, this whole thing with the abortion issue, it's going to take a significant effect, not only in the Kamala Harris, Donald Trump election, but down ballot, the Senate, the House, and especially in these states, these legislatures. These Republicans have held court for a long time, but I think people are frustrated by the whole abortion thing, and we might see a big problem for Republicans on the state level.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're going to see some districts flip. We're hearing things like Florida has a Democrat in every race. Iowa, I'm hearing just people getting out and door knocking and talking. And I saw a TikTok from a representative running for, I think it was Iowa State House. And I don't remember her name and I don't remember what district, but basically started talking to a Trump supporter, knocked on their door and started talking to them about what they believe in. And their beliefs actually, in a lot of things, meshed with what they within. He's like, okay, I'll take your information. I'll at least look it over. So there's a potential, I think, down ballot that these state houses are going to flip blue. I think some seats that nobody expected could flip blue. Um, I think Democrats keep the Senate. They flip the House, and people are going to see things change that they didn't expect.
Absolutely. And I think that after the election and after we see what happens in the down ballots and in the abortion questions in the various states, you're going to find a lot of these Republicans stepping back from that abortion issue because at that point it will be clear America does not want that bullshit. No matter how hard you try to shove it down our throats, there isn't enough people to keep you in office. So you either back off or you go down with the rest of them.
Yeah, they're just gonna have to. It's something like 60 to 70% supported nationwide for at least the same protections that Roe v. Wade had or something similar. And there's just not enough of them anywhere to really support it. I mean, what is it? 8 states have abortion on the ballot,
Right.
and Nebraska has it both ways on the ballot, both a ban and an amendment codifying it. And I think there's going to be a huge turnout for that one. And I think it's going to be the amendment allowing it that ends up winning by a large margin.
Exactly. There was something that happened in Texas too. We know we've got criminal, a corrupt criminal who is the AG of Texas, Ken Paxton. This motherfucker should be in jail by now, but somehow he stays out, probably largely due to the Republican legislature in Texas. But he had been probing into election fraud or voter fraud, which doesn't exist, but he's been going into it and he's been raiding people's homes, harassing people. A district judge yesterday said, yeah, unconstitutional. Stop that shit right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ken Paxton does and what Ken Paxton does after the election. I have a feeling the DOJ may take stronger interest in him after the election.
Oh, probably. He's probably going to appeal this because that's what they always do. They did,
Yeah.
and both sides appeal. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to make it sound like it's only Republicans that use the appeal process. Both sides will appeal, but he'll probably get beat at the appeals level too, especially on something like this. Um, but I think he's going to be a lot quieter after the election,
Yeah.
especially when Kamala Harris wins. And if she puts in anybody besides Merrick Garland as Attorney General, somebody who's got some teeth, who's
Yeah.
going to do something. I know with Ken Paxton, don't they have indictments ready to go for him that they just
Yeah.
haven't acted on for years?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Literally years.
so if she puts somebody in there who says, "Oh, hey, we got this sitting case out here who we haven't done anything on. It's ready to go. It just needs to go to trial. Let's do something." Okay, let's go. And moves. You know what I mean? That's what we need. We need somebody who's not Merrick Garland, who's not afraid to play politics, or who isn't playing politics by appearing to, or doesn't
Not,
want to appear to play politics. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what he's doing. I don't want to be political. So you don't do anything. And in doing that, you're being fucking political. Yeah, I think we're going to see a watershed moment after the election because nobody can say, oh, there's a presidential election coming up. We got to be careful. We got to walk on eggshells. I'm tired of that pussy ass bullshit. We need fucking people to be held accountable for the crimes they commit. Ken Paxton clearly has committed crimes. Donald Trump has committed crimes. Fucking J.D. Vance has committed crimes with regards to Ohio. It's got to stop. And I'm hoping against hope that after the election, all that breaks free and we start seeing indictments and we start seeing accountability.
I think you will. I think it probably won't come until after January 20th, after the new administration starts.
Probably.
We get a new attorney general. And maybe not, maybe with Kamala Harris in there until she replaces Merrick Garland, maybe she'll have enough, weight to get Merrick Garland to do something and do his job until she gets that new AG in. But whatever. I think they're going to start with any of the Republicans that were involved in January 6th that were sitting members of Congress. I think they're going to start, though, with the ones that lost their elections that are no longer in Congress.
Yeah,
I think that's where it starts.
You're probably right. That would be the easier road to take. Some people have brought this up, and it always sticks in the back of my mind. But there is kind of a ollie ollie in free period. The new Congress comes in on January 3rd. The certification is on the 6th. But from January 3rd to January 20th, Biden is still the president. And presuming we have a favorable Congress in terms of the House and the Senate being controlled by the Democratic Party, Biden can do pretty much anything, take the heat for it, and leave Kamala free and clear. So I'm wondering if they're going to take advantage of that short period of time, that what 3 weeks, 17 days.
17 days.
17 days. Will they take advantage of that moment in time? It seems like it's a great opportunity.
Right after Kamala Harris came out as the nominee, I said that. I was one of the ones that said that. Hey,
I'm sure that's where I heard that. Yeah,
there's that opportunity, and I think they will. Now, to what level, I don't know, but there's going to be cooperation between the Biden and Harris administrations. These are two presidents that got along great. They
yeah,
work together. They actually care for each other. There's very much a working relationship. It's not like it would have been if this was flipped and it was Trump and Pence, and we
yeah.
were talking about Mike Pence coming in. Donald Trump wouldn't have done a thing to help Mike Pence get set up.
No,
I think they're going to. I think there's going to be some things that might get done, and it might not even be Joe Biden playing politics. It might just be what can the Congress get done? What do they push through? And then if it's on his desk, if he thinks it's a good thing, he'll probably sign it regardless of whether or not it's going to take, if he's going to take the heat or if it would help Kamala. If it makes sense. The other thing is, if it's something he knows he doesn't support, but she would, a lot of those bills don't have time frames on them.
right.
So they just go to the president's desk and they're waiting for a signature. They don't expire, on January 20th. If he doesn't want to sign it, he can leave it sit there and wait for her to sign it.
Yeah. Well, I think some people are thinking, you mentioned that if he signed it beforehand, that stink won't stick to Kamala. And honestly, I think it doesn't matter because she will be more aggressive. And you're absolutely right. It isn't something that would have to be instigated by the president. It could be instigated by Congress and then send it up to the president. And just remember who will be the Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries. To me, he's like Nancy Pelosi with a fucking stick, because he's a little more
Yeah.
aggressive, a little more assertive, willing to be combative, and he's probably tired of the bullshit he's been put through for the last 2 years.
Oh, I think so. I think they're going to put a bunch through. What was the bill I saw Adam Schiff suggested? It was for preventing presidents from being able to dismiss any charges against themselves by
Right.
directing the head of the DOJ, the Attorney General, to drop the charges. Like they would have to go to Congress. They would also have to go before a 3-judge panel and testify that the president didn't pressure them to drop the charges and why are they dropping the charges, et cetera. And it would lead way to a criminal probe or an impeachment probe if they didn't comply, et cetera. And I think that could easily pass. I think Joe Biden would sign it. And I think that's something the Democrats need to get done that needs to be on the books. I think a bunch of stuff like that's going to be happening in the next administration. If we give Kamala Harris a favorable Congress, they're going to fix a bunch of loopholes that Donald Trump has exploited.
Absolutely. And there's another bill out there too about expanding the Supreme Court to 15 justices over a period of 12 years. It wouldn't happen all at once, maybe 2 and 3 or 4 or whatever, but they do want to expand the Supreme Court. So it's on their mind going into the next administration.
Well, that bill expanding it to the 15, I read about that. Doesn't sound like there's as much support for that specific bill.
Mm-hmm.
But expanding the court, it seems like there is at least some support for. There's a lot of stuff with that bill that they don't like. There's term limits. There's limits on how often presidents can appoint justices. It's like only in their first and their third year of being president. Like there's a bunch of
That's
stuff
kind of
in there.
bullshit. Who's
Yeah,
not for it? Are you talking about Democrats not for it or
both,
Republicans?
There's some Democrats that weren't for that specific bill with some of the restrictions that I can't remember which senator suggested it, but they were for reforming the Supreme Court, just maybe not all of the stuff that was in that bill.
Yeah. What they should do is refer to Sheldon Whitehouse and Jamie Raskin as opposed to what to do. They're the smartest legal minds and judicial minds in the House at this point. Everybody wants to stuff a bunch of shit in it, and it may sound good from the beginning, but there's all this little shit that makes it a little hairy.
Right. I think they just need to expand it to 13. I think to change any sort of time frame, like you can't put term limits on without passing a constitutional amendment. So that's got to be out. You can't do that. Just expand it to 13. Don't mess with when the president can appoint justices. The only thing I think they should do with that is there was one thing from this bill that I did kind of agree with. It would force Congress to act within, I think their bill said 180 days. I think there needs to be a time frame on the Senate to take up the confirmation of Supreme Court justices, and not acting within that time frame should be okay. That's the same as giving consent, as approving the nomination.
Right. Now, is it a precursor to get rid of the filibuster or gut the filibuster before you can do any of that stuff? I have to think that has to be done, or at least looked at.
They may have to either get rid of the filibuster completely or do what they did for Supreme Court nominations and say, well, this particular type of legislation is no longer bound by the filibuster.
Right.
And they can do that as a rules issue. They did that with Supreme Court nominations. It used to take a 60 vote push to get past the talking stage and actually hold a vote on a Supreme Court nominee. You didn't need 60 to get them approved, but you needed 60 votes to be able to hold the vote, which is a weird thing with how the Senate works.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. The one thing I want to talk about is the big news. People are listening to this on Tuesday, and of course, tonight is the night of the big debate, J.D. Vance versus Tim Walz. And I'm hearing a lot of weird things about this. I don't think it's as complicated as people try to make it out. I've heard some creators and I've heard some other people saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen. It may not go very well. J.D. Vance is an Ivy League educated Yale lawyer. So don't count him out. And I disagree with that completely, because when they're up on stage there, it's about personalities. It's about presence. It's about your charisma. JD has no charisma. 27% is his approval rating. He's forced to tell the lies that Donald Trump tells. So whether he's smart or not, he still has to spew bullshit and lies. Tim Walz, on the other hand, while he's not as educated, he's not a lawyer, he's very bright, he's humorous, and he's just an easier guy to watch and listen to. I don't see J.D. Vance as a real tough competitor for Tim Walz.
No, J.D. Vance struggles to come off as human. He's kind of like Ron DeSantis in that way.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He just has very awkward interactions with people. He's going to be trying to spin all of these fake stories. As he even admits, if I have to create a story, I'm going to create a story out of nothing. And he's going to try to do that on this debate stage. And then the only question is really going to be about this debate is, how good does J.D. Vance do? He's not going to win the debate, but how good does he do? And does he do better than Donald Trump?
Well, he can't help but do better than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was an absolute disaster. But when you put somebody who is socially awkward like him up against somebody who's the exact opposite, who's very popular, that people feel warm about, it just can't go well. And that's, I was telling you before we started the show, I'm watching some creators, or a specific creator. I'm not going to give the name because it doesn't matter. But they're saying, I don't have high hopes for this. Well, I'm going to say this right now. This is running during the day of the debate. You can say, I'm not sure how it's going to go. I'm telling you how it's going to go. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong based on what I see of these personalities. I could beat JD Vance at this point based on his personality. And if you think the Kamala Harris Tim Walz team isn't properly preparing him and setting up strategies and traps and that sort of thing, and that Tim Walz isn't smart enough to figure it out, I'm going to say this: when it's all said and done, some people might think Tim Walz is a better debater than Kamala. And he's not a better debater than Kamala. He's just in a much more easier, freer situation. He's not running for president. Kamala has to fit within a box. He doesn't. And if you let him go outside the box, he's going to destroy JD Vance.
Oh yeah, he's going to destroy him, no question. And the best part about this is Tim Walz is a common sense guy. He's going to speak very plainly, very common sense about a lot of things. But even if he had zero debate time, he is like prep time. If he wasn't prepped for this and nobody talked to him, nobody told him what to do, nobody gave him any strategies, he would walk in going, okay, I know they're going to talk about the economy. I know they're going to talk about immigration. I know they're going to talk about probably, since it's right after the hurricane, disaster relief. He's going to go down the list of the normal talking points, and he just knows what they're going to talk about, and he'll be able to run with it just by thinking about it. He doesn't need a lot of prep time to come up with these answers. Well, where JD Vance, when he has a floor debate, his side is going to go, well, they clearly gave Tim Walz the questions in advance. Clearly. No, Tim Walz is just smart enough to know what they're going to ask.
Yeah. And just by virtue of their personalities, when it's all said and done, regardless of who you say or who anybody says won this debate, I'll guarantee you this: there'll be a lot more people that love Tim Walz and a lot more people that hate JD Vance, because he is kind of the elite. He's got money. He's a tech bro. He's an Ivy League lawyer. Tim Walz is one of us. And one of the reasons they got behind Donald Trump in the beginning, because they felt like Donald Trump was one of us, as opposed to the establishment government. Tim Walz is doing it the right way. They will love him. They will hate JD Vance because they fucking already hate him.
I mean, you say more people are going to hate JD Vance. His approval rating is already 28%.
Yeah.
That's got to be about the percentage of MAGA in the country. I
Yeah.
mean, how much worse can it get for him?
Yeah, it can't get very good. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just Democrats that hate JD Vance. Republicans hate him too. He's going to be the goat, the scapegoat when Donald Trump loses, which is ridiculous because Donald Trump is his worst enemy. But they're going to blame it on JD Vance.
Yeah, he could be a worse vice presidential pick than Sarah Palin.
I think he is. I think he is. Sarah Palin, um, you know, they picked her because she was loud and in your face and kind of attractive. JD Vance, I don't know. I maybe some people find him attractive, but she seems stupid and silly, and that worked against him. He seems smarter but dangerous because everything he talks about, everything he says has to do with marginalizing people of color, marginalizing the LGBTQ, supporting the abolition of the abortion thing. And he just seems evil. I don't think Sarah Palin ever seemed evil. She just seemed dopey.
Yeah, you might be right. And I was thinking about this the other day. Maybe I'm on to something, maybe not. You don't remember a lot of the running mates unless they were really bad if
Right.
that person didn't win the presidency.
Dan Quayle, Sarah
Yeah,
Palin.
Dan Quayle, you remember because he was vice president,
Right. But he was a dope.
but he was a dope. I don't remember who Al Gore had as his running mate. I couldn't tell you. I'd have to stop and think.
Yeah.
I don't remember who Mitt Romney picked. It was an average politician. Okay. I don't remember it. Didn't stick out. But Sarah Palin, J.D. Vance, those guys you're gonna remember them for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, you will. You will. I mean, like Hillary Clinton had Tim Kaine from Virginia or West Virginia or something like that. Nice guy, very nondescript, fairly low key. He was of no help to her in the election. And that's the other thing about this. What people have to understand is we can get all wired up about this debate. Never in history has a debate between vice presidential candidates moved the needle at all in the election. If the only thing this can do, like I say, is get more people to be exposed to Tim Walz and like him more because he's an incredibly likable guy. Conversely, J.D. Vance is a very unlikable guy. This won't have any bearing on the election. That's why I think I'm going to sit back and watch this and not wring my hands and clutch my pearls. I'm just going to fucking be entertained by it.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be entertained by it. I'm going to watch it for the pure laugh value mostly, but and I'm going to love watching Tim Walz just destroy JD Vance. I'm going to slightly disagree with you though. I
Sure.
think this debate had the potential to move the needle. If
Yeah.
it was still JD Vance versus Kamala Harris and Joe Biden was running, people would be really invested into who the VP pick is on both sides because you have the potential for either candidate to potentially not make it through their term. I think there's going to be a lot of people. JD Vance may shift the needle farther away from Donald Trump winning
That's all he's
because
done
people
since he's been here.
are well, because they're watching how bad Donald Trump is and going, oh shit, he may not make it through 4 years. And then we're stuck with this guy,
Right.
this guy. They're not worried with Tim Walz, but they might be with JD Vance.
I should qualify what I said because I've said this many times. People want to compare what's going on today with what happened historically speaking. And I said, you can't do that because what we're seeing, we've never seen in history. So you're comparing apples and oranges. And that could be the same said for this VP debate. I think this VP debate won't have a lot of effect either way on the election, but I think it will have more effect on the election than any previous VP debate because of the contentiousness around it and because everybody knows Tim Walz. They love Tim Walz. They hate JD Vance. So this is like a wrestling match. People are going out to see if the good guy beats the heel. The baby face beats the heel. And that's why it's going to be so attractive. I'll guarantee a VP debates in the past will have never gained as many viewerships as this one tonight.
Oh, I think you're right. And I think if Kamala Harris had picked anybody but Tim Walz, I don't think it would be as big of a showing. The fact that he is, like you say, he's one of us. He seems very down to earth. He of the people, he was a school teacher. He doesn't even currently own a house because he was living in the governor's mansion. He seems like one of us. He's like, I didn't need a house. What did I need a house for? That kind of thing.
I would think that Shapiro would have put on a good show, but then it would have been just two elite academics going against each other. This is a better setup because you got us against them, and it's a better show. Same with the Mark guy. What's his name down in
Mark Kelly.
Mark Kelly? Mark Kelly is not an outgoing guy, not a sharp guy. I see Tim Walz telling jokes, embarrassing. He has no problem with embarrassing Donald Trump or J.D. Vance. He's going to make him look foolish, and
I,
regardless of if he's a lawyer or not, Tim Walz is more adept at that than J.D. Vance could ever hope to be.
I mean, Tim Walz isn't going to have to try very hard to make JD Vance look foolish. Let's be
No,
honest.
no.
But you're right. He's going to go with the jokes. He's going to be attacking JD Vance. I don't know if he's going to make a couch joke, but it wouldn't surprise me. Um,
There's going to be a catch line coming
it's
out of this too.
going to be at least one,
Yeah,
at least one, and it's going to be good. And if anything, I think they're going to have JD Vance on defense, just like Donald Trump was.
yeah.
I think the best thing that the Democrats can hope for is that JD Vance has just a better debate than Donald Trump, still puts out some good talking points that they can use, but has just a good enough debate that it's enough to go Donald Trump into another debate with Kamala.
That's true. And Kamala and her campaign are going off the deep end about this. I mean, Donald Trump was at the Alabama Georgia football game. They hired a plane to fly over the stadium saying Donald Trump decided to punt on the second debate. He doesn't want to talk. That flew across the stadium. Then when she was in Nevada, she called him out again. She's doing all the right things. She's trying to get under his skin. And I got to tell you, Kamala's very talented at getting under his skin. I'm thinking Tim is better at it, getting underneath JD's skin and getting underneath Donald Trump's skin, getting JD to say something against Donald Trump or disagree with Donald Trump. I don't care if he's a lawyer. This campaign run by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz' campaign has been masterful. They've done everything right, and I don't expect anything different in this debate.
No, I don't. I don't either. I think it's going to be just a massive takedown of JD Vance and Donald Trump at every turn. Tim Walz is going to speak to the common person. He's going to speak like us and just say, "Man, these people are weird," and put an exclamation point on it about how weird they are and how out of touch they are with just everyday people. Um, and Kamala trolling Donald Trump at the Georgia Alabama game is perfect. Um, Speaking of the Georgia Alabama game, I kind of went after Marjorie Taylor Greene for something she said. She was trying to say we can't have Sleepy Joe handling all the federal disaster relief because of the hurricane and the relief efforts and everything through Georgia, and tried to make it sound like Joe wasn't doing his job, but then had to be there. Then says, well, they need disaster relief or whatever. Where she was as the rainwater was going through her district and all this was going on. She was at the Georgia Alabama game with Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised Donald Trump had her nearby. I thought she was kind of excommunicated from the whole MAGA thing. And you've heard what Donald Trump has said. Donald Trump, I've said this before, he's getting crazy now. He's saying outrageous shit, and it's still going to get worse from this point on. As we get closer to the election, Donald Trump will say anything. And Donald Trump is trying to sell the fact that Joe Biden is holding back funding and help to the Republican states, the red states, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's not true. Even Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who is a Republican, said, yeah, that's bullshit. I mean, they don't. Kamala and Joe Biden are working as hard and as fast as they can. Some of these states may not accept the money because they want to own the libtards, but they're just going to own their own people that are struggling and suffering. So it's amazing to what lengths they will go to shoot themselves in the foot.
Oh yeah, they're trying. But I saw an interview done with Joe Biden, or a couple remarks he gave somewhere. I don't remember exactly where, but they asked him specifically, would you call Congress back into session? Because he can do that. He can
Right.
tell them, no, you're not on recess. I need you. I need you in Washington. They said, would you call him back for more relief money if we need to? He goes, I haven't ruled it out, but let's see what we need and when we need it. If we do need to do something, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden's a compassionate guy, and so is Kamala Harris. They are going to decide that Republicans don't deserve help, but Democrats do. He's a president for all of Americans, whether they voted for him or not, and that's just how he does business. That's how he's done business before. Now, the idea of short shrifting, opposing parties and states that are controlled by those parties, Donald Trump has done that. Donald Trump has done that more than once. Remember the throwing paper towels to people in Puerto Rico. He fucking botched the hell out of that.
Oh yeah, because he didn't even realize that he was in charge of Puerto Rico. He
No.
said something around that point. Well, I had a good call today with the president of Puerto Rico, or something to that effect. What were
Yeah.
you? What'd you do? Call yourself in the Oval Office? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But he didn't know what's going on. He doesn't know how most of the stuff works. He thinks he can do whatever stupid stunt and get away with it. And his base will cheer him, and that's all he cares about. As long as some people are cheering what he's doing, his ego's satisfied, and that's all that matters to him.
Yeah. One other thing about the debate people are worried about. I swear to God, people get up every morning, no matter what's happening, and are looking for something to worry about. But one of the things that CBS said about this debate, they haven't really owned up to the idea that they might fact check, which I think is stupid given how much heat CNN got for not fact checking. I don't think you'd want to make that mistake. Um, CBS uh, CBS doesn't say they're going to fact check, and a lot of people are worried about that. Keep in mind, we're not dealing with Donald Trump here that just keeps talking. We're dealing with a guy who has trouble talking. He's cognizant, but he's not very quick. He's not very clever, and he's not very um, he's just not quick at all. And Tim Walz is. I'm not worried about whether they fact check him or not because the outlet CBS will get the heat for it. I feel perfectly comfortable with Tim Walz fact checking JD Vance. It's a much different thing than Joe Biden. Joe Biden was slow, and he's trying to think about what he has to do. That's the thing with presidents. They have certain things they have to hit and do it in a certain way. Tim Walz doesn't have that restriction, and he's clever and quick. He's quick with a quip. I'm fine with Tim Walz fact checking JD Vance. It won't be a problem for him.
I think you're right, and I think Tim Walz isn't going to be as worried about fact checking like specific numbers and things like that. And deep, like he's also not going to be focusing too much, I don't think, on like hard facts like Joe Biden was. Joe Biden was all about trying to get out like
Right.
I got to get this stat and I got to get that stat out there, and I want this about my record and that about my record out there. Tim Walz is going to come out. They start if JD Vance starts saying something completely off the cuff when it's Tim Walz's turn, he's going to say, "Man, you're weird. Where'd you dig that information up? It doesn't. No, that's not something that's anything that's ever been a thing." And he's just going to go with it. And he's not going to throw out facts and figures as much. I don't think he's just going to call him out on his stuff.
Well, I said before Kamala Harris had her debate, I laid out a strategy that I thought would be the best way to handle Donald Trump. And it'll be different with JD Vance because he's not as volatile as Donald Trump. But what I said is come out, first thing you say, hammer Donald Trump, embarrass Donald Trump, and then go to the facts or whatever you want to say. And that's exactly what she did. It's not that I'm a genius. That's just logical with that personality. I think Tim Walz could do the same thing with JD Vance because I'm sure he's nervous here. He's going to take the heat if it goes bad for him. And then he has to go stand in front of Donald Trump. That's not going to be a pleasant experience. People are saying, well, Tim's nervous. Tim's got nothing to lose. JD Vance has got a lot to lose. And he's nervous, and they should capitalize on those nerves.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, no matter how this debate goes, JD Vance is going to be in trouble with Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
If by some miracle he goes out, has an absolutely stellar, perfect performance, appears human, has great interactions, and just shuts Tim Walz down and has the best debate in the history of debates, and appears presidential and everything, he's got to go back to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is going to rip him a new one for looking better than he did.
You're exactly right. And that's along with saying Tim Walz won, we should all say, yeah, but JD did a better job than Donald Trump by a long shot. We start spewing that out there, that is going to piss off Donald Trump. That might be a good strategy after this debate.
Oh, definitely. I think that might actually be enough to get him to agree to that October 23rd debate.
Yeah.
Trump would go if he thinks JD Vance did better than him. But Donald Trump's ego can't stand to be outperformed by anybody, especially his running mate. So that's why, I'm sure Donald Trump enjoyed watching the Pence debate where he had the fly land on his head. He looked like a goof there for a little bit,
Yeah.
Because Donald Trump didn't want Pence to look good. He doesn't want Vance to look good. And it wouldn't surprise me if the handlers behind the campaign have said, JD, go out there, do your best, but just don't show up Donald Trump. Don't appear to be too with it.
That's a lot to ask, though, because Donald Trump put on probably the worst debate performance in the history of presidential elections. So for JD Vance not to look better than Donald Trump, that's going to be a hard thing to do.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would say Donald's debate performance was up there with about as bad as how Nixon did against Kennedy when he had a cold, when he looked, he looked sickly, he looked
Right.
ill. It was up there. And uh man, I don't know how JD Vance can do worse than that. I think if he shows up and he makes complete sentences, he's done better than Donald Trump.
Absolutely. There's no question. Whether he's lying or talking crazy shit, who knows? But there are some people out there in on TikTok and other places saying, I don't know, I'm not so sure about this. How can you not be sure? Maybe I'm setting myself up to look stupid and be wrong, but I just don't think so. I think Tim Walz will do fine. I think JD Vance will embarrass himself because he's going to be doing nothing but spewing lies, and it'll work against him because those lies are so draconian and so authoritarian. People are going to go, wow, that fuck is crazy. Let him say all that shit because we want as many people to hear it to understand what they're truly going for. And he will expose that. He's not smooth enough to candy coat it and make himself look good. I've watched him in interview after interview. He just fucks up constantly.
Yeah, you're right. But the same creators that say that, oh, I don't know, it's going to be a close debate or whatever. They're the same ones that say the election's going to be close. They're not out there saying it's going to be a landslide like we are. They're the ones who are saying that, you know, the one if it's the creator that I think you're thinking of came out a while back when it looked like John Tester was losing the polls in Montana. Well, that's the ball game. We're not going to have the Senate. Nothing's getting done for the first 2 years of the Harris
Right.
administration.
Right.
They're looking for a reason to be upset and to be disappointed and to try to hedge their bet. And they're trying to back away from the feeling of hope that this campaign is bringing. I think because they're just so used to it blowing up in their face, they don't want to get excited about anything because that way, if it blows up, then they were right.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think some of these creators, whether it be on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, I think they get into a point where they get caught up in their own ego and they want it to be about them. They want people to be mad at them. They want people to be happy with them. They want the debate. They want the argument because it brings views and that sort of thing uh, to their videos. And that's what I'm thinking is, they want to bring this turmoil and then they want to whine and cry about it later. Fuck that. Tell us what you really think. If you really think this is what it is, say it. Don't try to stir the pot.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's going to not even be close.
No.
I think there's going to be states flip blue that we didn't expect. I think some races that we're talking about. Maybe John Tester does come back and win Montana. If he wins Montana and Sherrod Brown wins Ohio, that's it. We keep the Senate. Those were the two close races that everybody was worried about. If we flip Rick Scott and Ted Cruz in Texas, that's just icing on the cake.
Exactly.
You know, I think there's going to be a lot coming out of this election that we didn't expect. Um, I think they're gonna probably have the House by 30, 40 seats minimum.
I
And
agree.
then you're going to be able to see stuff get done. When you're working on a razor thin majority, even if the Republicans were unified, even if they were unified, working on a 5 vote margin is ridiculously hard to do, because you're going to always have somebody not there. They're out sick, they're missing, whatever. There's going to you need a unified party if you're running that close of a thing, and they're far from unified.
And one of the things I think people like you and I and some of the other creators out there have to do, assuming the Democrats get the House, the Senate, and Kamala Harris in the White House, which I think will happen. I know will happen. Um, we know that all Democrats don't necessarily vote democratically. There's a lot of people you don't know their names. They fly under the wire and they'll vote against their better interest or their party sometimes. I think that's one of the things we have to do as people who do what we do. Make those motherfuckers famous. Make them accountable for the shit they're doing. I mean, because there are Democrats that are against abortion, that want to fight for pro-life, and there are Democrats that are for the NRA. There are Democrats that are about money and not about the people, and we need to weed these people out and expose them for who they are so they can go away next election.
Well, yes, to an extent, but it doesn't hurt to have necessarily to have some of those dissenting voices in the mix. Like Joe Manchin it didn't matter that he voted against us on some of the bigger issues until we were with just a 50-50 split. When we needed him the most, that's when he fucked us.
Right.
If we would have had the House by or the Senate by 52 to 48 or 53 to 47, he could have voted against us. Nobody would have cared.
Right.
It wasn't until we absolutely needed him that he was still doing the same stuff. That's what we need to watch out for. If we got the House by 40 votes and two vote against like codifying Roe, at that end of the day, while it would be nice to maybe vote them out, if they're in a red district or a mostly red district, leave them. They're helping us most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. I think people have never really paid attention to what goes on in the House. It's been the apathy that's gotten us to this position. I think we need to know now that we're in a different world. Everything is out in the open. All the criminality and the corruption that was once under the wire has now been brought to the surface thanks to MAGA and Donald Trump. I think we need people to be at least acknowledged and exposed for what they are. If they want to keep voting them in, that's fine. But somebody like George Santos would have probably got by with 2 terms had it not been for MAGA and all the bullshit going on and people going after him. He could have just rode under the radar and done what the fuck he's doing. I mean, as it is, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are doing that. I think we need to be more cognitive of what's going on in the House, who's representing us, and if somebody's doing it wrong, not necessarily for my taste, but for the taste of the people they represent, they need to fucking know this. They don't, too many people count on a brochure they get 10 days before the election. Oh, I like that guy. We've got to be more educated about this stuff and know exactly what these people are doing and not doing for us.
Yeah, you got a point. And they refer to the House of Representatives a lot of times as the people's house because we vote them in every 2 years. The entire House is always up for reelection. You know,
Yeah.
from January 3rd next year, basically, those representatives, they're on the clock, basically. We're watching them or we should be, for whether or not we're going to reelect them. It's not like a senator who has a 6-year window
Right.
that we're going, well, they voted against us 6 years ago, but they voted with us ever since. They found their footing, we can give them another term.
Right.
So we do need to call them out a little more,
Yeah.
maybe. But it really depends on, which issues they're voting against us for, and if they have a reason and if they can justify why they're voting against it, especially if it doesn't hurt the bill's passing.
Right.
That's the other thing. If they
Right.
can stand it on principle and the bill still passes, okay. It's not as big of a deal to me personally. It's when they do like what Joe Manchin did and said, well, I can't support that when we needed his vote, all because he said, well, I can't go back to my district and get reelected if I vote for it, and
Yeah.
then not run for reelection anyway.
Yeah. Well, Joe Manchin got the attention, got a little power, and he thrived on it because he's a fucking egomaniac. And we just can't let people, whether they be creators or representatives, get caught up in their own little personal dramas and excitement about getting attention. Do what you do the job the way you're supposed to do the job. Attention will come if that's what you desire. But I'm tired of people trying to stir shit up to get drama and get attention for themselves. That's not why we're here. I tell you what, Eric, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. With us today is Eric from Iowa. We're talking about all things from the debate to some of the goofy shit that MAGA says. And you were listening, Eric was listening to a conversation I had with Jace on this very show. And it sounded like you wanted to add to that.
Well, Jace was giving you a hard time about coming up with the lotto numbers. And I'm like, thinking when you said that, first thing popped into my head was, well, if Mike does win the lotto, he can turn around, use that money to buy all of Alex Jones's equipment.
There you go.
And, then he's got a professional recording studio.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I used to own a professional recording studio, and I don't know if I would own one. I will guarantee you this: if I ever happen into a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars, I will tell you that a lot of it would go to people who need it. And it's not because I'm a great guy. It's because my wife would insist on it. You know, if you got enough, you got enough. Start helping other people out. And I think if more people with a lot of money thought that way, even took a small percentage of their money, we could help a lot of people out instead of, like I say, these people don't want a lot of money. They want all the money. And that's the sad thing. Um, I probably wouldn't. I know enough about studios where I'd probably buy new shit. There's some bad juju on that Alex Jones shit. I don't think I want it. And there are some. I was watching something on MSNBC. I think it was with Rachel, and she was talking about J.D. Vance and some of his ideas uh, about how pretty much to get rid of the government, fire everybody, destroy everything, and become an autocratic society. And somebody said, well, how do you do that? Of course, he didn't have a solid answer for that. He couldn't answer that, but he referred to another name, and I can't remember his name because he's inconsequential. But this guy is a radical right blogger, and then they showed some video of him. I mean, what this guy is flat out, he's just saying the quiet out loud. He's saying, we need a dictator. That's exactly what he said in order to fix everything, all the problems in this country. And that should be enough for uh, Tim Walz to say, the guy you're fucking quoting is asking for a dictatorship. And this guy is just a little dumb fuck blogger. He's nobody of any importance, but that's who you're going to refer to. You're an Ivy League lawyer. Why do you have to refer to some dumb blogger for the ideas that you're trying to put across?
Well, they have to because that's all they've got. It's
Right.
like that story that came out. What was it? Was it Friday or Saturday? Maybe it was Thursday. I don't know. Where Donald Trump said he would go after and prosecute Google for putting out nothing but bad stories about him. And what I said in my TikTok about it was, and I simplified it a little bit, but if there are 9 out of 10 stories are all saying the same thing and they're all not flattering to Donald Trump, they're probably the truth. And it's not so much that Google's promoting the bad stories about Donald Trump, it's there's more of them because they're all speaking the truth.
Right. Stop doing the bad shit. Then there won't be any bad stories. It's along the same lines of what he complained about with the debate. Well, those people fact check me every time and they never fact check Kamala Harris. Well, because Kamala Harris wasn't saying anything crazy or anything that was a lie. You were saying, see, this is where Donald Trump's mindset is. You have to understand why he thinks he was cheated in the 2020 election. Because before the election, he won by 63 million votes, okay, in 2016. His people around him are going to say, you get 63 million votes, you're going to win this thing. Well, he got 74 million votes and he still lost. He can't understand that the reason he got more votes but still lost is because people were terrified that he might win and many more people came out. He doesn't understand that. The same way he says Joe Biden doesn't pull a crowd at a rally. He can't win. How can you say he won? They always make these qualifications that make no sense, that are fucking silly. And that's how they convince themselves that they got cheated.
Yeah, exactly. Like Joe Biden was following COVID, uh, restrictions. He was saying, we're not holding big indoor events that could be super spreader events and spreading COVID. So we're
Right.
just not going to rally. We're going to do televised. We're going to do, I think they spoke to a car rally at one point where everyone was in their cars,
Right.
and Joe Biden was doing what he could to protect people and help keep them safe. Donald Trump doesn't care about that. And because he didn't see the same things that Donald was doing, Donald knows one playbook.
Yeah.
That's it. And if the other side wins by any other means than what playbook Donald Trump is playing out of, clearly they cheated.
Yeah.
And like you said, he got more votes than he did in 2016, but he doesn't look at how many voters were eligible to vote, doesn't look at how many more voters came into the rolls, that had turned 18 in between there, doesn't look at any of that, and says, well, I got more votes than I did last time, so I should have won. And then they did everything they could, the Republicans, to not count the mail-in ballots until some of these states, they can't start counting them until after they've counted all day of in-person ballots.
Right.
Well, almost all the Democrats were voting by mail. So no wonder it looked like Donald Trump was going to win these states by ridiculous margins, by margins, as he would say, never before seen. Well, yeah, it looked like you were winning some of these states by 70, 80% because all the Democrats voted by mail.
Donald Trump,
Once they counted them,
yeah,
they landed at normal.
Donald Trump does something that all narcissists I know do. They decide how something should go. I mean, I've seen this in business where you're doing a deal with somebody and they end up taking more money and they know somebody's going to call them out for it, but they immediately start rationalizing. Sure, I took more money, but I did this, but I did that. And that's what Donald Trump does. He decides how he wants something to go, and then his mind starts twirling and he tries to rationalize why he's right. He's always wrong, but that's what they do. These are sick fucking people. They're selfish, self-centered, narcissist motherfuckers. And I know a lot of them that were in the business I was in before I did this. My father, I've seen the fucking playbook and it's always the same and it's always bullshit. And generally they're too strong or too in your face for anybody to push back. The moment people push back, this is where they fall apart. And this is where we're now with Donald Trump. He's falling apart.
Yeah, exactly. He's decided how this election should go. He decided how 2020 should go. But like you said, it didn't go the way he thought. So clearly there was something wrong with it. And he was justifying why it should have gone the way he wanted. It's not that he did something wrong. He'll never admit that.
No.
It's got to be something nefarious. But he's falling apart. He's breaking down. He's saying all sorts of stupid shit. I mean, what was it, Sunday, when he said that he wants the 24-hour period of increased police brutality? Then he said, well, maybe not 24 hours, maybe just an hour. Just get the word out that they're doing it. Let them go crazy. And that'll stop all the violent crime in this country.
Well, and that's the way Donald Trump thinks. It's very black and white. He says there's too much crime, in spite of the fact that crime is going down since Joe Biden's been in office. So, in order to stop the crime, use the bully tactics, the intimidation tactics, and just let the police go wild for an hour or 24 hours or a month or whatever he wants to do. He thinks he can send these people out, this Gestapo type group, let them do anything to anybody just to scare people. And they'll say, well, I'm not going to commit crimes anymore because Donald Trump might send the fucking Gestapo out again. The problem with that is we know the police aren't always the best judges of who's guilty or not. In this country, we don't have a judge, a jury, and an executioner on the street. That's why Derek Chauvin is in fucking prison right now. But what about the people that get beat up or shot or killed that weren't actually guilty? It was just they got caught up in the collateral damage. And that's what would happen. This is how crazy Donald Trump is. He's at a point where he thinks the only way he can win this is by talking strong, draconian, tough guy-ish. And it's working against him. He's not even cognitive to understand the things he says is hurting his chances and not helping his chances.
I don't think he was ever cognizant of the idea of anything him saying would hurt his chance.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
I mean, from the get-go, it wasn't long after he started campaigning, what was it, 2015? Yeah, I think it was 2015 or early 2016 when he mocked the disabled reporter.
Yeah.
That was early on. And then he said, well, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose a vote. A normal politician, that would have been the end of their career.
Right.
Donald Trump kept riding the wave of this circus that he created. The media kept propping him up. The Republicans then propped him up because he was gaining momentum. And they saw their chance of getting back into power on the coattails of this guy.
Right.
And they saw a reincarnation of Ronald Reagan in a way. And I think that's what they wanted, was to use the fame of Reagan, or this guy who's like Reagan, who's just famous, to get him into office. And as you say all the time, he was a useful idiot.
Right.
They could pass whatever, he would sign it, and there you go. And he fell ass backwards into the presidency. And he's never been cognizant of the idea that anything he says could have hurt him because the Republicans never treated him like anything he said could hurt him.
The problem with Donald Trump is what he doesn't recognize. All his life, he's been bailed out. He's been able to say what he wants to say. I mean, during the time of his rise, he would say the most crazy, up, up, outrageous shit, like the Access Hollywood thing and grabbing women by their genitals. He always had apologists. Well, it's just locker room talk. Oh, what he really meant. Do you ever notice that? How every time he said something stupid, a politician or one of his supporters would say, well, what he really meant. Well, now it's been ramped up so much, fewer people are willing to say that anymore. So the tide has turned. He's not being protected as much. He's still being protected some, but not as much as he was on the way up. And this is causing the descent. And as I've said before, when you're dealing with a narcissist, once the descent starts, there's no coming back from that. The end result is always a crash and destruction. And that's where he's headed now. Every time he opens his mouth, people are less likely to support him because what he's saying is even more crazy than what he said on the way up.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, as he's saying, just whatever, the apologists aren't coming out nearly as much because there's no way to spin it. He's saying some completely unhinged stuff, and there's just nothing they can't glean a kernel of truth out of any of it in any way to spin it. If they could find a way, they'd do it, but they can't. But then it's funny, those same people who would apologize and tell us what Donald Trump really means will listen to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris speak and actually give points and give fact and say have meaning behind their words and not need anybody to translate and not hear a word that's actually being said.
They will say about Kamala, yeah, she said this, but she didn't give specifics, which is ironic to me because Donald Trump can't even get in the fucking ballpark. He can't put together the sentence. He goes off on tangents within the sentence. They're holding her responsible for not being granular enough, but Donald Trump doesn't say anything. It's my contention the reason Republicans are saying this about Kamala is they're desperately looking for something they can grab, exaggerate, and exploit and make her look bad. And at this point, the way she's talking, there is nothing they can do that with. You know, more money to the middle class. Oh, how do we exploit? You can't exploit it. They want to pick out little details like they've always done with Joe Biden and exaggerate it and make it a thing. Joe took a bribe, so we're going to impeach him. Well, that never happened, but they sure talked about it for several months and tried to get that into the narrative. And they're looking for something, anything to get against Kamala Harris, and they're not having much luck.
No, they're not because she's talking common sense. She sounds like one of us. You know, one of the things Donald Trump can't let go of, he's like a dog with a bone, is this idea that she or didn't she work for McDonald's? She talks about working fries at McDonald's. And I saw
Who
something a
lies
while
about
back,
that? Who would lie
right?
about that?
But I saw something a while back that said 1 in 8 people in the I think it's either in the United States or in the world have worked at a McDonald's at some point in their life.
Right.
1 in 8, you know. And I saw a creator, I can't think of the guy's name. He goes by Well and Septic on TikTok, and he talks about wells and septics in one of the Carolinas, I think. But he says if you work for McDonald's for 2 years and that's on your resume, he goes, I'm more likely to hire you. Because if you've stuck it out for 2 years, you're trainable. You learn procedures. You know how to be, he talks about it like it's a good thing. And Donald Trump can't get over this idea whether or not she worked there, but it makes her human. It makes her average. It makes her seem like a middle class person. And then she talks about the struggles of the middle class and building those up. And the Republicans are having a hard time digging into that because there's nothing there. There's no scandal. There's no salacious thing they can twist with it. Unlike, say, Hillary Clinton, who they always had her emails. They had Benghazi. They had, well, she didn't do anything to Bill because of Monica Lewinsky. Like there was always scandals around Hillary that they could feed the negative narrative on. And there's just nothing with Kamala Harris.
I will tell you this, between the time I was 14 and 15 years old, I worked at Kittleson Super Value as a bag boy. And then I worked at Riverview Pizza making pizzas. If I was to do a resume today, I don't think I'd put them on there. Not because they weren't important or formative for me. That's not the point. The fact that they don't show up on her resume when she applied to be a fucking prosecutor, big surprise. And the idea of trying to make something out of this, that just shows how desperate they are.
Oh, very much so. They're so desperate help. Donnie said he wanted to go to work for a McDonald's just for a half hour and do the fry job just to see how it was. And I did a video talking about it, and the number of comments in those videos where they said, "Yeah, McDonald's doesn't hire felons."
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. When we look at what's going on with Donald Trump now, he is in desperation mode, and you can hear it in his voice. You can see it in his face. People are saying, well, he's has dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever the fuck he has. There's something going on mentally with him, something physically that's not right with him. But unfortunately, the Republicans are all in on him, and they got a hope against hope that he can win the election, which he can't. But I really honestly believe the evangelicals, the tech bros, even the Republicans are thinking Donald Trump gets elected. He ain't going to last 2 years. He's going to be in jail or he's going to keel over. They're all in for J.D. Vance to take over as the president. And that's a problem given that his popularity is 20%, his approval rating is 27%. I think that's something we should talk about now. We would have talked about it with Biden and Kamala. Well, Biden isn't going to make it 4 years. Are you okay with Kamala being president? We should say the same thing about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. You might love Donald Trump, but are you ready for J.D. Vance being president? Because that's likely what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, I've already seen some people talking about it, that the plan would be to get Donald Trump elected, and then JD Vance within days goes to Congress and says, "Yeah, this guy's nuts. This guy's mentally not there.
And they'd be right. And they'd be right.
Here's all of his cabinet members saying he's incompetent and he can't be the president. We need to remove him," and using the 25th and kicking him out. And it's a complicated process, and it would take a little bit, but they could do it. And some people think that's the game plan here.
Well, it
That's
could
the
be.
idea, is to get JD Vance in.
You know that some of the Republicans have already addressed the possibility of changing or making the 25th Amendment different. And you would think that that's so they could do something against Joe Biden, which they can't because it's got to be the vice president and people on the cabinet. So the Republicans couldn't oust Joe Biden based on the 25th Amendment. But I hadn't thought about it. Maybe they're trying to look ahead here and make the 25th Amendment easier to implement should Donald Trump win the presidency. I hadn't thought about that till you just said that, but that makes more sense.
Yeah, and I think they're already, at least some of the people in play are expecting Donald Trump to not last his whole term.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw another creator, I can't think of who it is, said their prediction is within a week or so of Donald Trump losing the election, of when the news stations call it for Kamala Harris, that you're going to start seeing top Republicans all starting to disavow Donald Trump. They're going to walk away from him.
I agree.
He's going to be a pariah within his own party, and the donations outside of maybe his base are going to dry up. The big money not going to be donating, even if he says I'm running in 28. Not happening.
No.
And then as it comes around, he is going to be on the outs. And as we were talking, I was thinking about it. If he does lose this election, which, obviously he's going to lose. There's
Yeah.
no way.
No way.
I don't see a path for him to win the election. I didn't see a way for him to win it with Joe Biden. I just thought it was going to be closer.
Yeah.
But after he loses, there could be a chance, even though his ego wouldn't allow it, one of his kids maybe, or if one of his attorneys can push hard enough, it wouldn't surprise me with the rate that he's declining, and it's very public that he's declining, and the stupid stuff he says on stage, that all of that gets used against him in some kind of a incompetence defense for his cases, that they say, yeah, he's suffering from dementia And if that comes out after the election, I would not be surprised.
That might very well be a strategy of keeping him out of jail. That's not to say they shouldn't find him guilty of everything he's been guilty of. As I've said early on, I said that early on I said I didn't think Donald Trump would go to jail. Now, if everything is the way it is, they can't do anything but put him in jail. He's committed too many egregious crimes, more than we imagined. One thing I will say, though, where I was wrong, people give me credit for predicting things. One place I was wrong, the idea of disavowing and stepping aside from Donald Trump, it made sense to me that that would happen right after the 2020 election. He'd lost. He was going into exile to Mar-a-Lago. That would have been the time to disavow him and send him away. They'd be in a much different situation, a better situation right now than they are with Donald Trump. But they fucking didn't do it. I didn't account for the fact that we have pussy ass bitches in the Republican Party that want to hold on to a sinking ship.
Yeah, I don't know why they held on to him, but I've made this comment before. If it wouldn't have been for Mitch McConnell, we wouldn't be fighting with Donald Trump right now. He was banking on Merrick Garland not being, well, like you said, a pussy ass bitch with these indictments. If things would have gone the way in my head that I think Mitch McConnell wanted them to go, they didn't convict him in the second impeachment. They said, well, he's no longer a sitting president, so we can't convict him. That's
Right.
for the DOJ. That's for the courts to deal with and the criminal side of it. I think he
Right.
was expecting Merrick Garland to move faster than this and not have it be 4 years later with no cases going to trial in anything January 6th related. I think he was expecting this to be wrapped up 2 years ago and the DOJ and Merrick Garland to take out their trash.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I think in retrospect, Mitch McConnell and the others in the Republican Party are probably not happy that it went the way it went, because he's been nothing but a drag on the Republican Party. It's funny. Uh, in spite of the crazy shit that Donald Trump says, um, like he said recently that he thought that Kamala was mentally disabled. Yeah, good one, Donnie. She got her law degree. She passed the bar. She became the attorney general. She became a U.S. senator. She became the vice president of the United States. Yeah, she's got some mental disabilities. Again, it's projection with him. He actually has the mental disabilities. But when you go to the likes of Mitch McConnell or some other higher level Republicans, they'll say, well, what I really think he meant was that Kamala has all these crazy liberal ideas. I'd like to know which one of those ideas that she's put out there is a crazy liberal idea, like helping the middle class, getting health care, codifying Roe v. Wade. Which one of those are crazy? They need to own up to that so we know what they're thinking, so we can consider that when we vote.
Yeah, they'll never tell us. They just want us to think that all liberal ideas are bad, all while a lot of them, you know, soak up the Social Security. They get the Medicare. They
Right.
get food stamps. A lot of the red states are taker states. Tom
Right.
Powell Jr. on TikTok does a breakdown of it all the time, and like 9 of the top 10 states that receive federal money for food stamps, Medicaid, things like that, are Republican. Are
Right.
Republican ran and have been for decades. They're all taker states. And then states like Illinois, which is blue and has been for a long time, are giver states where they get less back for every dollar of tax money than what they kick into the system.
What do you think would happen? Yeah, we know that the red states take in more than they put out. Blue states put out more than they take in. What would happen if the Republicans won across the board and they did the things they wanted to do, and then the red states suffered for it, meaning Social Security, Medicare, whatever? What would happen with the red states? Would that be a fuck around and find out moment when they'd find out that they've kicked their own ass?
Maybe, but they'd still find a way to blame the Democrats. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously,
Yeah, you're
I
probably
have
right.
been in, I've seen videos of it. I've been in small towns where they've been mostly Republican, or they counties that have voted Republican for decades, and nothing's changed, nothing's gotten better. And they go, well, fuck, things haven't gotten any better. Okay. Well, whose fault is it? Well, it's Joe Biden and the Democrats' fault. But your county's ran by all Republicans. Yep, would never vote for a Democrat around these parts. Okay. So the people in charge are fucking you over. Nope, Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Yeah.
They would find a way to blame the Democrats somehow, even if the Republicans were the one doing it, because they ignored in their own counties.
The question that you made the point that people will disavow Donald Trump and they will step away from Donald Trump after all these years, after walking it up to the last day. How do they do that? How do they disavow and walk away from him and not think that people will remember what they did?
I don't think they care if people remember. I think they're just hoping that people's short-term memory kicks in and only remember the fact that they walked away from him finally, and that gives them some kind of a redeeming quality.
And therein lies the job that you and I have after the election. Point out who these fucks are and remind people that they were Trump humpers. They were Trump-la-fucks. And whatever they're saying now clearly is a lie because they said something different prior to the election.
Exactly. I mean, and some of the loudest voices are going to be some of the ones gone. I think Lauren Boebert's at risk in Colorado. I don't know if she gets reelected. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know if she gets reelected. Matt Gaetz, don't know if he gets reelected.
Ted Cruz, Rick
Scott, Josh Hawley, which he hasn't been really as much of a loud voice. I think he's trying to fly under the radar now.
Yeah.
I think because he's scared about not getting reelected. And then when they get replaced and things start getting done, that's the big thing for the Democrats. Once things start getting done and things start improving for the middle class and below, they need to lay on the gas and keep pointing out the fact that things are only getting better because of the policies they put in place to make things better for those people.
Who's got to be, nervous, as nervous as anybody right now. You made a point that after the election, you thought the indictments to members of Congress would go first to those people who are no longer in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think somebody like Rick Scott has got to be scared shitless because we know the FBI took his phone and they've been investigating him for some time. And if he loses his Senate race, which is distinctly possible, he's going to be completely unprotected, completely vulnerable, and that motherfucker's going to go down.
True. The one thing that I will not understand is why they are still being protected if they're in Congress. I think some of it has to do with Merrick Garland and the January 6th idea that they don't want to prosecute any sitting members of Congress for it. I think a new AG will prosecute whether they're in Congress or not. But I think they'll start with the ones that aren't, because those don't look nearly as political. And then those people who have been voted out, if they flip on the ones that are still in, now you've got some more evidence, you got some more leverage, makes it an easier case to sell to the public. But yeah, Rick Scott's got to be nervous as hell. They have his phone. He's not going to have any protection if he's not a senator. And then after Rick Scott, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene, you've got Lauren Boebert, you've got Chuck Grassley.
Yep.
Ted Cruz potentially is involved in that mix, and among a bunch of other ones.
Wouldn't it be funny if we found out Chuck Grassley was the P. Diddy of Congress? That would be awesome. 150-year-old guy having sex parties. I think we should start spewing this because apparently lies don't matter to the Republicans. We might as well make up shit.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I saw a video by a creator who was going on that making up stuff and had my hopes up for a minute. And she came out today and said that J.D. Vance's wife was leaving him.
I saw that.
And filing for a divorce, and it sounded very convincing going through it. And after about 60 seconds, said, see how easy that was for me just to make up anything?
Right.
And I was getting ready to go look for a story to find a source to verify it, and I was going to do a video on it. And then went, oh, darn, it's not true.
Well, I will give people a heads up that you know this and I know this. You're on TikTok, you will hear some crazy story. You want it so badly to be true. Go to a standard source. If it's that big a story and it doesn't show up on MSNBC or AP or NPR or any, it's not real. It's a lie. I saw that piece. I didn't hear the part where they said, "Oh, see, it's no big deal." I thought it was somebody really reporting it, and I immediately discounted it because the first place I would have heard about that wouldn't be some TikTok person with 10,000. If it was Midas Touch, different story. But somebody with 5 or 10,000 followers, they're just clearly trying to drum up followers.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look into the creator at all before. I was just listening to the story going on. And I'm like, man, this is great. I need to look into this. And then I watched the video to the end and went, oh, they're just trolling JD Vance. This was great. And I loved the video. I thought it was awesome and very clever, showing about how easy it is to spread misinformation. But you know, you can make up a story that fast
Yeah.
and people will believe it, especially if you get it in the first 30 seconds of a TikTok. A lot of people scroll past after that. They don't listen all the way to the end.
There have been times when I've thought about that. If I get a lot of people following something, and if I have a particularly interesting or volatile topic, more and more people will watch it. And I thought about that same thing. What if I just made some shit up and see what happened and see how the Republicans like it? And then I thought about it a little harder, and I said, we've been going through that with the Republicans for the last 10 years. We got to be very careful about playing that game, because then you're going to get TikTok uh, creators doing shit like this and realize that it's beneficial in getting followers, and they'll just keep doing it. People are despicable. They'll do anything to make a little extra money or get more followers. I understand the point. Nice burn, but I'd rather people don't do that too much on this side, because it makes us just as bad as they are.
Yeah, you're right. Which is why I appreciated the fact that this creator, she put it into her thing saying she made it up in the same video. She
Right.
didn't wait for a follow-up video. She didn't come out a day or two later and that it's spin. She sat there and said it in the same video. And if you're gonna do that, that's probably the best way to do it, is to put it in the same video saying, yeah, I'm proving a point here with how easy it is to make stuff up.
Yeah.
But no, we don't need to go down their road of just making things up to make them up, to make them look bad. We don't need to. There's enough out there about them to make them look bad on their own.
And somebody in this country has to have some credibility and legitimacy, and hopefully that's the Democrats. We know there are plenty of Democrats that don't. We're not blind enough to suggest that all Democrats are good and all Republicans are bad. Well, I will say all Republicans are bad. I had somebody, we're in the election season, and we've got a lot of local people in my town that are out campaigning and leaving off brochures and stuff like that. I've had two occasions where somebody's come to my door, or come up to me and said, "Well, I'm such and such, and I'm for this," and uh, and I always look at them because they never really describe what their party affiliation is. They're not really upfront about that, especially if they're Republicans. And I just simply ask them, "Are you Democrat or Republican?" And each time they'd say Republican. Sorry, I'm not listening to you. The Republican Party is burning down. Donald Trump is your Lord and Savior. And they go, no, 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 I'm against Donald Trump. I don't care. You had the last 8 years to fight against Donald Trump, and you chose not to. You may not be guilty of being MAGA, but you are guilty of being accessory after the fact. And that's enough for me not to fucking vote for you. They don't know what to
Yeah,
say to that.
yeah, especially if they've joined the party or even entered politics after Donald Trump was already there
Yeah.
and now they're running,
Yeah.
and they know how bad he is and they're still putting that R next to their name. You can't do that. I had somebody, I don't even remember what election it was, one of the state house elections uh from my area come through handing out brochures. And it was a couple of kids, high school age kids that were handing out brochures, and it was for their dad
Right.
or something who was running. And I'm like, okay, what party? All right. And I was very nice to the kids because they're kids.
Yeah.
And I wasn't gonna insult their dad in front of them. But like as soon as they said Republican, I knew immediately I wasn't even gonna look at the information after they gave it to me. Don't care. I'm not
Well,
I'm not voting that way.
yeah, there's no reason to hammer kids. And if it was kids, I wouldn't have done it. But this guy's looking at me in the face, or this woman's looking me in the face, proudly telling me she's a Republican after 8 years of you trying to destroy this country. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be polite.
Exactly. Like if it was the candidate himself standing there, I would be like, yeah, I don't support you. Why would I support you? You support Donald Trump. And watch him try to backpedal away from it, you know. So you got the R next to your name. He's the head of your party. If you if you were so against Donald Trump, you'd run as an independent or you'd run as a Democrat.
Right. You support a racist, a rapist, a treasonist. And if you support that, I can't imagine why I would ever fucking vote for you. And I think I think for all intents and purposes, after this election, the Republican Party, as we know it today, has been burnt to the ground. It can't survive after this election. There's going to have to be some reiteration of the party or another party completely with a different name. People always say, well, MAGA will hang around. They said that about the Tea Party too. Where's the Tea Party now? MAGA will disappear because they've done exactly what the Tea Party did, cause problems in this country, and ultimately fail. That's where we are with MAGA.
I think some of the Tea Party became MAGA, but still,
I agree.
they
Yeah.
the Tea Party disappeared. The MAGA movement, they're going to go back under their rocks. You know, they're gonna scatter, and they're not going to poke their heads back up for a while, and they're going to wait till they see another opening when they can, you know, rear their ugly head. But it's not going to happen for a while.
No.
There's going to need to be a new party, a new conservative party. Even Liz Cheney, we've talked about it before. Liz Cheney said there might need to be a new party, and if they do, okay, I think there does need to be a secondary party. You know, we can run with just Democrats in control for a while, a
Yeah.
little while. You know, 4, 6, maybe even 8 years of Democrats being in complete control. But anything beyond that, and we're going to need another party to come back around
Right.
to offset that party idea, because you can't have one party rule for too long or they become complicit and nothing's going to get done.
Right.
And then at that point, what are we doing? We're just wasting more money, wasting time. Nobody's lives are going to get any better. Because if they don't have the opposition that they have to worry about running against, then they don't have to work nearly as hard.
You know, yeah, I wonder if the ultimate parties are going to be Republicans or whatever they call themselves then are just right of center, and then the Democrats, the majority of the Democrats will be left to center. I think you'll always have the radical right, the more radical left. They're going to want to stick their nose into everything. I just don't know if they have the majority of the people on their side. However, we've got millennials and Gen Zs taking over. We're in a different world. They don't think like me or other people my age. I was going to say you, but you're a millennial, so fuck you. but we might see an entire different paradigm shift with this country going more left. It's certainly not going to go more right. It's going to go more left, and I'm not afraid of that.
No, it's definitely going to go more left. Um, and I am a millennial, but I identify more as Gen X.
Okay.
I'm closer in age to the end of Gen X. You know, I'm in that gap, and a lot of the way, like my attitude and stuff, just seems more Gen X than it does millennial. Because there are people 10 years younger than me that still qualify as a millennial, and
Right.
we're not a lot alike. But people in my generation, we're looking at it going, can't buy houses, can't buy cars. You know, I think he's Gen Z, but there's a kid that I work with. He's 21 or 2, bought a car. Granted, I think he's living with his mom, so rent's covered. But
Yeah.
his car payment is more than my rent, or
Yeah.
more
It's
than not my rent,
ridiculous.
my mortgage.
It's
But he's
ridiculous.
paying he's paying like $900 a month for his car payment.
You know, it's funny. We had a piece of furniture that my wife had to have, and now she wanted to get rid of it. So I just put it out on Facebook Marketplace for free. But I said, this motherfucker's big. You better bring friends because I'm 64 and I ain't helping. I had somebody deliver it, and I'm not hauling it out because I'm not going to get hurt over something I give away for free. And this young kid, when I say young kid, he was like early 30s, very nice kid, clearly a hard worker. He brought his 5-year-old son, who was adorable. I love that kid. And he comes in here and he starts pulling. We pull it out to the hallway, and then he starts taking off the doors and all the stuff to make it easier. But he pretty much put it on a fucking two-wheeler and hauled it up the steps. Now this thing is 77 inches high, 45 inches wide, and it had to be a couple of 100 pounds at least. And he did that. And he said, I appreciate it. My wife saw it and she just had to have it. I said, well, that's cool. You know, I'm glad it's going to a place that can use it and be valuable to them. He said, well, my wife and I are always looking around Facebook Marketplace for free stuff. I got a table earlier. He says, I have 2 kids, 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. We have one income and we got to take advantage of every situation. And I said, good for you. You're hustling in spite of the difficult situation you're putting in. You're not bitching about it. You're doing what you have to do. I wanted to say just vote the right way, but I thought, let's get this on the truck before I start an argument.
Right. But you got to take advantage of those deals when you can get them. Something free is something free,
Yeah.
When I moved into this house, one of my coworkers at the time, he was getting new furniture anyway. He goes, I got a couch and a love seat. He goes, I'm getting rid of it anyway. He goes, I don't need anything for it. If you want it, it's yours.
Well, and that's stuff I didn't have to go through when I was young. We'd go out to the obvious stores and buy the shit. But that's a realistic need right now to be a little more conservative in your spending because you're being put in a worse situation than I was because of student loans and high prices and the lower wages. That's something that really troubles me because I have a son. My oldest son has a good job. He's doing all right. My younger son is kind of getting started in IT. And he was telling me about a job, just doing like a help desk type of thing. And I said, what's it pay? And he says, well, it starts out at $12 an hour. I go, you fucking crazy? You make more than that now working in an hotel. Don't go backwards. Just wait it out. I got him here living with us here. Doesn't bother me. He's an OCD about cleanliness. So every time I walk out of here, I come back, my house is clean. I'm cool. Um, but it's tough out there. The jobs are tough. And as I told him too, I said, the way this system works is that as we're approaching this election, all these big companies are on hold with everything they're doing. They're tightening up. They're not hiring people. They're not paying people. But once the election is over, things should loosen up some. And I expect that's going to be true.
You're probably right. A lot of the hiring is going to be dependent on who wins. And I think if Donald Trump were to win, which, as we've talked about, there's no way it's going to happen, but if a miracle for him would happen and he would win and he'd fall ass backwards into the presidency again, I think the hiring would slow up dramatically.
Yeah.
Wages would freeze. There wouldn't be any sort of anything going forward or progress made because they'd be afraid of seeing what the economy is going to do with all of his ideas. And everything he's doing is, going to tank the economy. So these companies are going, oh, we got to write out 4 years of a potential shit show. We're not going to want to do anything. Now Kamala Harris wins and the economy continues to boom. Wages are going to go up, especially if she passes a minimum wage increase to $20 or $25 an hour.
Yeah.
Like for me, I've got a 30-year mortgage with a ridiculously great interest rate. If my wage goes up to $25 an hour, that's huge for me. My
Yeah.
bills aren't going to change that much. Nothing
Right.
else I'm doing is going to change too much that it's going to be that I can't adjust with it and end up in a better position than I am now.
Well, and there's a lot of motivation for somebody of your age or younger to be in a better position. What people have to understand is I'm old eventually, and I'm buying less things than I was when I was younger. I was buying more cars. I was buying more expensive houses. I was buying more clothes. I mean, you see how I dress every time I come here. I the only thing I buy is loose shit, whether it be loose pants, jogger pants, or a polo shirt and slip-on shoes. I don't spend a lot of money on clothes. I don't spend a lot of money on gas because I don't drive as much as I once did. But if we want people to consume, boomers are dying off. They're doing less. They're selling their houses. If millennials and Gen Zs can't afford anything and they have to live these Spartan lives, that's going to affect the economy. It's going to fuck up the economy. We got to make it so that you can buy more shit. That's why I never understood why you don't want to raise the minimum wage. Yeah, it costs more for the company, but it's going to allow the company to sell more to the people that fucking work for them.
Exactly. And there's got to be something they can do with raising the minimum wage to prevent these companies from raising their prices too drastically to offset it. Because if they raise their prices as far up as we raise wages, you haven't gained anything. You just made it look better on paper temporarily.
Right.
Um, the other issue is they have to do something, in my opinion, to where if they raise everybody's wages, um, that uh, you don't just end up in a deal where everybody ends up on a level playing field.
Right. Right. Well,
Because you got
they did the opposite thing with COVID. They raised the prices because of COVID, and then they didn't bring them down after COVID. Plus, they didn't give you more money to earn. So they throttled your throat and strangled you just for their own little bit of greed.
right, you know, and that's the thing that they will raise prices no matter what. I mean, rent's gone up since 2009. You know,
Yeah.
one place I was renting, I haven't looked it up specifically, but I know what rent is going for in that town now. Two-bedroom place I was renting for $425 a month. I can guarantee you is probably 7 or 8 at least now.
And that's
And
and when you compare it to a big town like this town, the metro area here, that ain't shit. People would kill for that price. In this town, I think my son and his new wife have a two-bedroom house with two-bedroom apartment. They're going to buy a house later, but they're in an apartment right now, two-bedroom, two-bath, and I think they're paying at least 2 grand a month, and that's pretty good for this area.
yeah, and
It's
that's
crazy.
crazy that people are paying 2 grand a month. That's what is that for? $2,400, $24,000 a year in rent, and that's more than what the minimum wage is right now if you work a 40-hour-a-week job.
Well, exactly. You know, and 40 years ago, that's a long time ago, I know, but when my wife and I were first married, we were in a one-bedroom, one-bath apartment in a suburb of Minneapolis, a nice suburb, and we were paying $365 a month. Now for that same place, it's going to be $1,500 to $1,700 if you want to get a decent place. But how much has income gone up in that time? Not that much. Not as much commensurate with the way uh, grocery prices, gas prices. See, that's the problem. You know, when my wife and I first started out, she was a teacher, I was doing what I was doing. Everything was going pretty good. We didn't get much in the way of raises. They were very lean on raises. But over time, we go, God, this is getting tough. What's going on? We got good jobs. We're getting paid. It was because everything went up. We were forced to pay more money for rent and clothing and housing or food and that sort of stuff, but our incomes weren't going up. And that is where the problem lies. We need people to be making more money and then not gouging the fuck out of the people who are making money.
Exactly. We need to go back to a time when you can work one job, make a living, you should be able to, if they took minimum wage back to what it was, which was always intended to be able to support a family of four for all of your basic necessities on a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
If you could, if minimum wage was sitting there and they made it so employers had to continually give, cost of living raises, et cetera, not this, I've worked for companies where if you got anything better than a dime an hour for your yearly raise, you got an amazing raise, and they told you to count yourself lucky because most people got a nickel.
Yeah. Well, if you look at what the minimum wage is now, it's seven something, right? Let's call it eight.
7 and a quarter.
So it's $8. You work 40 hours a week. That's 320 a week gross before taxes. 320 times four is 1280. That's before taxes. Now you're making 1280 a month, but rent is 15 to 1700 bucks for a one bedroom house. How do you fucking live? You can't do that. And this is one of the big problems. It doesn't affect me directly anymore, but it does affect my kids. It does affect my grandkids and future kids of everybody else. That has to be balanced out. That has to be figured out, or we're going to be in trouble, not only for the kids, but economically in this country. If they can't afford to pay for rent, how are they going to buy cars? How are they going to go on trips? How are they going to buy clothes? We need them buying things in order for the economy to continue. And if they can't buy things, then the economy tanks. And that's the short sightedness of Republicans.
Oh, exactly. About 10, 20 years now, 20 years ago now, I had about a 10-year-old car. And that was considered an old car at the time, having a
Yeah,
car that had 10 years on it. And, a lot of people even then were like, you got an older car, you should look at getting something new, getting something newer. But I drove what I could afford, no big deal. And I wasn't too, it was still in good shape, so I didn't care. But now, 10-year-old car, even used, is almost out of some people's budgets.
right.
Now I know people driving almost 20-year-old cars that are still in good shape because it's the best they can afford, and they're happy about it because they can afford a car.
That actually
They can't
runs.
even consider a brand new car. They can't consider a 10-year-old car as within their price range. We got to do something to fix all this. But one problem I see with raising like the minimum wage and stuff like that isn't like prices going up. It's not anything economic. I just hope that if they raise minimum wage, these businesses are smart enough to know to do something to where, because I've worked for companies that would do this, like if minimum wage goes up, well, now everybody's making minimum wage. Doesn't matter how long you've been there.
Yeah.
That you need to make sure that you're offsetting your seniority people with enough that they feel valued, or they're going to go somewhere else in some place in the door, but it's going to probably offer them more money above minimum wage. And you're going to start seeing higher turnover because nobody wants to be there, you know, a long time and then be making the same as, and that what is now start pay.
Well, the Republicans are all about free market. So let's have a free market. Pay people what they deserve. If you refuse to make it beneficial for these kids, uh, then they've got nobody to hire. If you got nobody to hire, you don't have a business anymore. If you decide to raise your prices like at McDonald's or some other fast food place, well, people just aren't going to show up and buy your shit. You got to balance it out. And it's up to them to do that. You got to pay people to want to work there, and you got to make prices good enough where people want to buy. If you can't come up with that combination, you shouldn't be in fucking business.
Yeah, exactly. Tom Powell Jr. talks about it all the time. He's for regulated capitalism to where your people that work for you should be able to, you can make as much profit, as much dollars as you want to make, as long as you're taking care of the people underneath you. And I
Right.
agree with him. He talks about Walmart all the time. Walmart's one of those companies where, like, I don't remember the figure, but a large chunk of their employees qualify and receive federal assistance
Right.
because they're not getting paid enough money from Walmart, and that
Right.
shouldn't be a thing.
Well, you should have enough foresight. I've owned a couple of businesses, nothing big, but uh, I understood that everybody's got to be doing okay if you want to continue doing it. And, sure, I'd like to make more money on a deal, but if one guy doesn't make any money, there's no more deals. There's no more employees. There's no more customers. Everybody's got a benefit. And this is where the greed comes out, where I want it all and you fuckers can just suffer. That can only last so long with a free market. You're going to go out of business if you continue to do that.
Exactly. That's why, like Tom Powell says, it needs to be kind of regulated where they need to be required to pay their people livable wages, et cetera. And there should be some kind of a penalty if too large of a percentage of your employees are on federal assistance, but you're making billions and billions in profit. There's a problem with your business model if you're not taking care of your employees.
Yeah,
But like
absolutely.
in a lot of these small towns, Walmart comes in, forces out all of the competition, and then you have no choice but to go there to shop because there's nothing else around. What do you do?
You know, one thing about these millennials and Gen Zs, they seem to like to organize a little bit. They got a little 60s mentality in there. You know, we've seen it with the Gaza thing and such. Um, all that has to happen to somebody like Walmart is them organize and say, nobody goes to work there. Not for that money, not for no benefits. We're not working there. Even Walmart, as big and powerful as they are, they ain't going to last long if they can't get anybody to work there. It's just not going to work. They're going to go out of business or they're going to have to move the business because if they don't have people working for them, they can't do the business model that they want. And they need to be taught that lesson.
Yeah, you're right. And as far as them, you know, mobilizing and organizing and things, it's far easier for them than ever before because of the technology.
Absolutely. The
And
internet, you
they're
can do
way
anything.
more comfortable with it than any of the other generations, you know. And this is coming from an older millennial. And, you know, I know how even the Gen Xers, there's a lot of Gen Xers that, yes, you're comfortable with technology, but not to the level of some of these kids.
No,
The 16 to 18-year-old Gen Zers or Gen Alphas, I don't know if Alpha's up that old yet, but as they're coming up, they were born, you know, they were born on this. They haven't known a world in some cases, almost pre cell phone for sure,
right.
pre computer. They don't know what it was like. They are so comfortable with technology that they have way more ways of getting around and talking to people and organizing through various apps that we wouldn't think of using them for that.
My 4-year-old granddaughter's on her iPad and I go, how does a 4-year-old know how to do that? And then she kind of sighs and tries to show me. My 4-year-old granddaughter's trying to show me how to use technology. It's fucking crazy. It's a way of life. And when I was growing up, there was no cell phones, there were no computers. Fuck, when I was growing up, there wasn't even fucking cable. So um, we are in a changing world, a changing country. And the young people coming up, they're going to make some changes in this world. It's absolutely necessary if we want to continue. And if these young people want to survive, they have to change some things.
Yeah, and some things are going to change, I think. We're just going to start with wages. You're going to start seeing a bigger push for healthcare benefit changes, restoring Roe. You know, I think in the next 4 to 8 years, the economy is going to figure itself out. People are going to be making more money than they've ever made. They're going to be able to buy houses. You're going to figure out the student loan issues. And it's going to start with listening to the younger people because, you know, I'd say my age and younger or close to my age and younger because we're the ones that are in there struggling.
Yeah.
When you listen to some of the older people, like I listen to my folks, and my mom talks about how, well, when she first bought her house, you know, there were weeks she had to get by on a loaf of bread and a can of soup for 3, 4 days. Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, the math still does. If you break down the math of what you were making per week and what you were spending percent wise, the money's not there for us to even do that.
Exactly. And that has to change. That absolutely has to change. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Of course, we just want to remind folks that the debate is on tonight. It's going to be interesting. JD Vance and Tim Walz. Uh, I'm just, as much as some other people want to disagree with me, I'm thinking that after the debate is over, there's going to be a half hour period where Democrats and Republicans are going to work together to dislodge Tim Walz's foot from J.D. Vance's ass. It's going to be an ugly mess, and hopefully they won't put it on television, but it's going to be a mess. But I want to tell people that uh, I was going to do a live right afterwards on YouTube, but there's another creator doing that, and I don't want to compete with that. So I'm going to do a live on TikTok. There'll probably be other people doing lives on TikToks. Some people will do it during the debate. I'm not doing that. I want you to focus on the debate. We can talk about it afterwards, but I'm not going to interrupt. I don't have enough important things to say during the debate for you to be distracted from the debate. So watch the debate. I'll do a live on TikTok when it's all said and done, and we can hash this shit out.
Well, I look forward to that live. Your lives are always fun. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna, probably do a recap video after the debate as well, but I don't plan on doing one during. Focus on the debate. Like you said, it's probably going to take about a half an hour to remove Kim Walz's foot from JD Vance's ass.
I'm
It's
hoping
probably going to
so.
be at least up to the ankle, if not the knee, because he's going to stop a mud hole in him and walk it dry.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I know there's people that disagree with me, and God knows I could be wrong. And you know what? I'm not fearful of being wrong. I can be wrong, and I'll own up to it if I am. I just don't see how that happens. I want to remind folks too to seek out, if you haven't already, and I think most of you have, but for those who haven't, look for Eric's account on TikTok and on YouTube. It's Analytical Iowan. I think, yeah, you have it on your screen name there. That's how to spell
Yep.
it. It's ANALYTICALIOWAN. Check it out. He's got some great videos. He's both on YouTube and TikTok. If you're listening to me, you should be listening to him. And I hope you will check it out. So this is going to be fun. I'm going to sit back and just be entertained and not worry about this having too much impact on the election. Either
Yeah, I'm
way.
going to enjoy. I'm going to have it. I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. Watching Tim Walz kick JD Vance's ass. Gonna, enjoy it as much as I did when Kamala Harris kicked the hell out of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching for that moment and see if I can figure out exactly when there may come a moment when that just trips the ego of Donald Trump and he goes and says, "Yep, I'm doing it." Because apparently he's even doing live commentary during the debate, I guess.
He is.
I thought I saw something about that he's going to be doing some sort of a
Wow.
live commentary thing during the debate. And if he is, there could come a point when his ego gets set off and he says, "Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there October 23rd. Let's do it."
Yeah, you can't have
And I'm
somebody get more
hoping,
attention than he gets.
I'm hoping that's what happens. Maybe what it'll be is if the viewership numbers are higher for JD Vance and Tim Walz and Donnie and Kamala, that might be enough to set him off.
That would set him off. And maybe we should set up a GoFundMe to get Tim Walz a new pair of shoes because he's not going to want to wear that shit afterwards. He's going to want to get something else. Get him some hunting boots or something to fit with his camouflage and all that bullshit. So those of you listening, hopefully you'll check out the live on TikTok afterwards. Of course, I'm a lazy bastard, so that live, if you don't join the live, I will record it, and that will be the Rational Boomer podcast. So if you can't get the live, you'll hear it recorded the next day. Check out the Analytical Iowan with Eric. It's well worth the listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.